I had the pleasure of meeting today's speaker at the IUSM Mensura workshop last year in the Netherlands, and I'm excited to see him making his ICEA debut today. Shashank Patil from Capgemini India is staying up late tonight to give us some insights on the important role that perceptions and preferences play in software estimations. Whew, Shashank.
Oh, thanks, Megan. Thanks a lot for the introduction. Am I audible loud and clear?
Crystal.
Perfect. Okay. Thanks, Megan, for the introduction. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in part of the world. I'm Shashank Patil, and in fact, this presentation is also, it was to be joined with my colleague Ria, but unfortunately, she is unwell, so she couldn't make to present this on the webinar. The title of my presentation is the Software Estimation Approaches, Perception to Preferences. So here we will be talking about various different approaches in software estimations and how we need to address the diversity in the software estimation process. A little bit about my company. I'm from Capgemini. I'm sure most of you would have already heard about Capgemini. It's a global IT service provider. We are more than 270,000 people across 50 countries, and we work with world-renowned clients to deliver them the IT solutions in consulting, technology services, and their digital transformation. We are a people-centric organization, so our vision is that business value of the technology comes from and through people. So whenever we talk about people, by default, diversity comes into picture. And with this vision, we are on the mission of delivering business technology solutions to fit clients' need and drive their results. A little bit more about our company. I won't take much time on introducing my company, but we are a more than 50 years old organization carrying the big heritage in the IT industry, having a deep industry specific experience, and we have gathered a huge knowledge repository over a period of time into the IT world. We have seen many ups and downs of the information technology cycle. With the recent acquisition with Altran, we are a 17 billion euro company as reported in 2019. So what we are going to talk about in this paper, as I said, we as in Shashank and my colleague Ria, she has also got a substantial contribution into coming up in this presentation. So we are talking about the diversity in the estimation approaches. All of us, we definitely know how important it is, the estimation process in the early life cycles of the project. As a IT service provider organization, when we deal with the clients to help them resolve their problems and deliver the solutions, when we bid for any new proposals or the projects, the strong foundation of estimation becomes a key feature in building up the right kind of pitch for the client. And when a huge amount of people are involved, as a spectrum of people are involved, their perception, how they perceive towards that problem statement differs from person to person. And naturally, their approaches to arrive at estimation also differ based on their perceptions. So they prefer various different approaches. As we know, in estimation, there is no one silver bullet. There is no one kind of a technique which will be useful for all. So while addressing this diversity, we need to have a framework. That's what our paper will talk about. And that how we can, one point A is how we can address the diversity and how we can measure those different approaches provided by the framework, estimation framework. So that's what we'll see in this presentation. So before starting this exercise, the study and analysis part of the exercise, we try to address some basic questions. So these are very basic questions. We try to go to the basics of the estimation process. Like why we need to estimate, first of all. As we know, for a project, I mean, when I'm saying project, it is like a PMP typical book definition of a project, which is a unique endeavor, which has got a start, which has got an end, likewise. So when we refer to that particular entity as a project, then in any industry, let it be civil, mechanical, real estate, anyone, then for any project, having the base estimate in place is really must. So we try to understand what are the main attributes why we need to estimate a particular software. So these are very basic things. We try to go to the basic, as I said. So these things could be very repeat for you all seasoned members of ICIA and who all seasoned in this estimation domain. But then, yeah, so first of all is the business justification. Whenever any organization is intending to invest into the software asset, naturally the investors and stakeholders will ask for what kind of ROI I'm expecting out of this investment. So for the business justification, we need to have the right kind of estimates baseline because the organizations are answerable to the investors. Success of the project, it largely depends on how your estimations are reliable, and it depends on the foundation of the estimate. So if we have the right kind of estimates in the beginning of the project, most of the success story is already written for the project. Having the right kind of holistic estimates, it also helps in doing the effort distribution for the project on across different phases and work streams or disciplines within the project. So it will also help doing the resource loading kind of a balance of resources. It will help to derive the right kind of pyramid, the staffing pyramid. The resources can be either human or non-human resources, but as we know in software industry, mostly 90% of the times it is the human resources. And by doing this kind of resource loading pattern, it will help us to derive the contractual schedule. Moving on, I hope you are able to see my screen as well. Yeah. So in addition to the earlier parameters, there are few more parameters we identified, like monitoring and control. When the project is going in a execution mode, it is very important to monitor the project progress, to check if there are any effort overruns, budget overruns, and schedule overruns. So having the right kind of estimation baseline, it will help us to get the project on track if it is deviating from the baselines. So that's the most important part, which we see that monitoring and control is the most important aspect to have the right kind of estimate. In many engagements, as we know in the business, alignments and misalignments are part of the game of the businesses. So if there are any misalignments, misunderstandings between the contractual deliverables between the vendor and client, then having the baseline estimations which are unambiguous and agreed by both the parties, it becomes a reference point to handle these disputes in future. So any legal litigations, in case of any legal litigations, the baseline estimations play an important role to go back and ensure for those baselines. Again, having the right kind of estimates, it helps us to monitor the team performance in terms of productivity and efficiency. And most importantly, the estimates also goes in the organization repository as a future reference points. So the future projects, they refer to these estimates. So when we say that when we are estimating, it's not only we are producing numbers, but we are creating a lot of knowledge base. And that knowledge base is very important, vital for the organization. If it goes to the repository, it becomes a very good reference points, the KDB, as we say, the knowledge database for the future projects to refer to. So having said that, we all appreciate that these are the factors with which we say that estimates are really very important in the life cycle of the project at a very early stages of the project. But of late, we see in the agile methodology, in the agile practicing world, advocates of agile, they are promoting a lot of movements like #NoEstimates. So if people are delivering in agile mode, it doesn't mean that no estimates are not required. Maybe for specific sprint, even if they do not estimate, that also would be fine. But overall, how much it's going to cost to the organization, that definitely is required, because in a way, agile is just a methodology, how we are delivering the project. It will not establish whether the estimates are required or not required. Estimates definitely are required. So any project, maybe your delivery methodology may differ. It can be DevOps, it can be any other methodology. By the end of the day, we are delivering some solution to the client with the agreed baselines. So our take is that even if it is an agile delivery method project, then also estimates are must and they are highly important to have the baseline estimates, as we said. So I can, on a lighter mode, I can think of only project where estimates are not required is if we go out for shopping with your spouse, then maybe that's a project where you may not require the estimates. Just go and spend the way you want. But unfortunately, businesses doesn't work that way. So having the agreed cost baselines and effort baselines is must for any business to happen successfully. So as we understand that estimates are really very important, what can wrong estimates will lead to? Wrong estimates, as in the beginning, if we end up in doing the wrong estimates, there can be two scenarios. Either we overestimate or we underestimate. So as a IT services provided organization, if our winning team or the bid team, it happens to overestimate the project, right? So there can be two possibilities of wrong estimates. Either it is overestimated or it is underestimated. So if it is overestimated, it means that we have lost on the opportunity. The target is lost because the unrealistic estimates, as we know, the market is very competitive and there are a lot of pricing pressures. So cost is one of the most important aspects of getting the right kind of business. So overestimation, of course, is not a choice. The wrong estimate will lead us for loss in the business, a loss in the opportunity. At the same time, if the estimates in the beginning are underestimated, then during the execution, we might see huge lot of problems like schedule overruns. It could be lost to the client. It may also incur some penalties if the contract is very strict and stringent. It also may lead to the budget overruns. If it is the budget overrun, it means it's a loss for the vendor. If it's a fixed price engagement, underestimation always, most of the time, it also puts the team under pressure. And to match these unrealistic low estimates, the team ends up in overslogging, and it may result in the team unrest and fatigue. It's not very good for the project. Again, for underestimated project, many times we see there is a compromise in the quality. So in longer term, it's definitely, we all know the cost of quality. So if it's a poor quality delivery, it's going, end of the day, it's going to be cost for both the parties. So as we see that majority of the project will fail if the estimates are not reliable or they are not properly estimated. So as we understand that it is very important to estimate, it is very important to do the right kind of estimates. So we try to do the root cause analysis. What are the challenges in producing the estimates? As we say that accurate estimates is just a paradox. We cannot say that estimates are accurate in the beginning of the project. There are many factors influencing the right kind of estimates to be produced. We can only say that estimate is accurate only at the end of the project. But rather than accuracy, reliability is the main factor, which is very important. Are these estimates reliable? Has the bid team given the right kind of thought process to arrive at these numbers? So these are the major important aspects of producing the right kind of estimates. So we identified two major categories. What are the challenges in producing the right kind of estimates? So the two categories are external factors and the internal factors. So in the external factors, which lies at the client side or which are external to the organization, many times we hardly any control over those external factors. Amongst internal factors, it depends on the organization structure, culture, its processes, tools, techniques, framework provided for the estimators, for the users, what kind of frameworks it is been provided, and then what kind of skills our staff is having, how they perceive the solutions. So these are the internal factors. So going to each of these factors and how can we address those factors to produce right kind of estimates. Talking about external factors, technology is the most important, highest priority factor. As we know that every fortnight some new technology is coming in the market, some kind of either package or ready-made out-of-the-box solution or some kind of reusable frameworks. And with the advent of mobile applications, again, the things have become very much packaged wise, just out of the box, open it and start using it, start deploying it. So those kind of technology platforms are coming daily in the market. But for the enterprises, this also is a major important factor because they often have to move from one technology to another technology to synchronize. So with this changing technology, to have the estimation framework which will align with the changing technology is definitely a big factor. But that we have categorized as an external factor. The domain and the industry sector go hand in hand. So the domain for which we are trying to deliver the solution, if it is a government or it's a private, so those aspects will play definitely an important role. Now, what kind of maturity the client is having and what kind of business processes they are implementing. And as we see, as in IT world, the technology is changing very fast. Even in the traditional businesses also, where we are providing the solution, there is a huge amount of disruption is being seen. Their business processes are changing. The houses, business houses, which were stable for more than 50 years or 60 years, they are collapsing and they are coming up. They are being replaced with a new technology or new businesses. So disruption is happening all the way around, and hence it is impacting on the traditional estimation processes, estimation techniques. So while coming up with the new proposals, one has to estimate carefully, looking at all those changing scenarios. Geography plays another major important role. We have seen that in recent past, some statutory or legal requirements for different geographies has changed drastically, like introduction of GDPR. And recently we saw a lot of instances happening because of data breaches. Many projects incurred huge amount of losses. So those were not considered into the estimations. So, excuse me. So these kind of aspects which needs to be taken into consideration are most important for the estimation framework to consider, and the estimation framework needs to be robust enough to consider those aspects. Even the cultural background of the client is also very important, because how mature the client is, how efficient he is, how efficiently he or she is giving us the requirements, how much clarity is there on the requirements. So these aspects also impact a lot on producing the estimates. So these are few of the external factors, and we'll see how the robust estimation framework can address this. Moving ahead to the internal factors, these are the few internal factors which becomes a challenge in doing the estimations. The intangibility of the software. Software, as we know, it's highly intangible in nature. So it is very difficult to quantify. There are a lot of efforts happening in the software industry since its rise, almost 50 years, since 50 years back. People are struggling to establish some methodology to measure the software size. Huge efforts have gone in defining the processes, but unfortunately it works only in some of the instances. Most of the times measurement of software is a gray area. So there is no available standard prescribed approach or method which will satisfy all kind of softwares on earth or which are prevailing in the industry. Another major internal factor is the reference data. We all know that how difficult it is to gather the post-project data. Many times when the project is reaching towards the end, most of the team is ramped down. Either it is ramped down or they have moved somewhere else, and it's very difficult to get the post-project data. So for the similar projects data or the past effort data, having it in the repository is big challenge. Similarly, because of unavailability of the reference data, the performance baselines excuse me, also becomes a challenge, because though we may end up in getting some effort data from the past projects, but at the same time, what kind of functionality was delivered against that efforts, what kind of tool sets were used, what kind of accelerators were used, what was the non-functional factors, what were the environmental factors. So those things, gathering those things to the minutest detail is big challenge. So it is difficult to establish the performance baselines, and in lack of performance baselines, it will impact the estimation framework which we produce. Another major aspect is the changes. Software industry is known for having very troublesome change requests. People think that typically there is assumption that in software there is no material involved, so the vendor can adjust to our changing requirements, and change is inevitable. Of course, with the changing businesses, clients always think of some new functionality to be incorporated into the software. It is not like any other traditional industry, like for example the bridge. If the bridge specifications are set, nobody will change the length or span of the bridge or the way the bridge will land from one point to another point. It is always frozen. But that's not the case in software industry. So managing changes is a big challenge in software, and to have the estimates aligned with the aligned with the changing requirements is again a big problem. And last but not the least is the organizational diversity, which we will address in this presentation. So what we mean by this diversity is that, as we say, when we talk about people by default, diversity comes in picture. Each person has got their own preferences and how they perceive to the solution. So the diversity is in terms of the competency levels, skill levels of different teams of business analysts and the solution architects. How do they see the problem? How do they approach toward designing and assessing the solutions? And each one of them would have their preferred approaches towards estimations. So in the organization, so as I said, we are a 270,000 people organizations. Each one is having a different set of thought process, a different set of background, and they would prefer to address the problem in a unique and different way. So if we can say, there can be three broad categories. One category of estimating people is experienced experts who rely on their experience. So we call them as gray hair estimators. So for any problem, they will give the expert judgment, and that's it. I mean, they wouldn't be caring for going to the most of the proven methods. Second category, we would broadly say that they are kind of analytical in nature. So they will have the good analytical skills, like B school graduates having some experience and some exposure to the analysis part. So they will prefer to dissect the problem into smallest units, and then that's where their analytical skill will come into picture, and then they will roll it up to the project level. The third category which we observed within the organization is the methodical. They have a prescribed surgical methodological approach wherein they just rely on the organization processes, organization provided baselines, and rule books and the directions. So these are the three broad categories. Not that any of this category is right or wrong, but to address to these various different spectrum of set of individuals, the estimation framework needs to be such a robust that it should offer all the approaches in under one roof. So that's where we say that the unified estimation framework. So we came up with a unified estimation framework which will host most of these approaches in the solution. And at the same time, as we said, that no approach is right or wrong. But now if we offer too many options for the users, it might lead to the confusion, what is to be used and in what scenario. So to address that, we identified a measurement framework. So the study which we did in the organization is that we came up with a measurement framework, and we floated a survey to understand what kind of approach is best suitable under what circumstances. So before going to that survey results, I would like to just touch upon those various different estimation approaches. The centralized framework which I was mentioning, we call it as a GREAT. It's our intellectual property, and it currently hosts 5 different approaches for estimations. Most of you are already aware of those approaches, like it is bottom up, top down, which is also called parametric. It can be, and another one is expert judgment with 3-point PERT, analogous, and WBS component driven. So the centralized framework offers these various different approaches. So based on one's preference and based on one's comfort level and the situation, one can select a specific approach. There is also possibility that more than one approaches also can be selected, and user can triangulate just to substantiate the estimation number produced by one approach. Are they reconciling with the one which is produced with the other approach? So briefly touching upon these different approaches, we all know that expert judgment or the 3-point PERT estimate is wherein, like a Delphi method, we take our inputs from different experts, and we take 3 points from each of those experts. One is optimistic estimate, pessimistic estimate, and the most likely number. And there is a statistical processing which happens, which gives us the probability curve, combining all the inputs from various different experts who give the numbers. And then that probability curve defines, it will tell that with this percentage probability, this will be delivered in so many hours or so many days. So that's just a high overview of expert judgment. And another is referring to the similar projects in past. So let's say, for example, in the organizational repository, a similar kind of HRMS project for a mid-sized organization was delivered in say 20% months. So, and if the bidding team is bidding for a similar kind of project, so they may refer to those aspects. There are some certain guidelines, and based on those similarities, they can pick up the right one and reuse that estimates. So as we say that reusability is not only in the software delivery, but in the early stages of estimates also. But there are certain rules in which these estimates will be, this approach will be applicable. The next approach which is provided in our bouquet is the component driven, which is the WBS driven. Now the WBS has two dimensions of WBS. Either it can be a functional work breakdown, which is product breakdown, work breakdown, or the activity work breakdown. In the functional work breakdown, typically the user tends to break the functionality into pieces and then estimate each individual single piece, which is rolled up at the estimate level. So that's work breakdown or component driven WBS. It has got its own benefits, like there is a huge kind of traceability by doing this component WBS driven approach. And that is really useful in the delivery of the projects. The remaining two are most important aspects of estimations. Is that, sorry. Okay, thanks, Megan. The remaining two approaches are the top-down, which is parametric, and the bottom-up. So top-down is also called as parametric estimations, wherein it needs a software size in place. So once we have the software size established with any of the sizing techniques, then with the size of the software and the historical data, there is an equation which will include several different parameters, and that equation will give us the final numbers. That's what, in just a nutshell, the top-down estimate is. The next one is a bottom-up, which is the most popular estimation technique, which is very, very methodic and has got a right kind of thought process gone into that. Say any technology platform has a defined delivery method. So maybe it can be SAP, it can be Oracle, but there is a definite method to deliver or implement that particular technology platform. And that method includes elaborate WBS, the work breakdown structure. So that's the activity work breakdown structure. So it is split across the phases, work stream, disciplines, and then the activity. And then each activity on its own is estimated separately. And then it is with the help of effort drivers and the effort metrics. And the size is distributed across all those activities, and then the final estimates are arrived. So the estimates are first calculated at activity level, then they are rolled up to the discipline and work stream level, and then to the phase level, and then to the project level. So, but then for these two techniques, top down and bottom up, size is must. So if users are preferring the top down or the bottom up estimates, then the sizing method, then what kind of sizing methods they should be using. So in our framework, we also introduce 5 different sizing techniques. So 3 are very detailed sizing techniques and 2 are high level sizing techniques. So it starts with the function point, as we all know about function points. Then use case points. Sub-process points is a Capgemini specific method of deriving the size of the packages. Then we have got ROM size, and then we have got a t-shirt size. So the framework is not only hosting several different estimation approaches, but it also hosts the sizing techniques, sizing methods. So having a quick look at these sizing techniques, function points is a very methodic one, and it actually it's very function point analysis is a very elaborate and complex process to arrive at a software estimations, but it has got its own limitations. Like in case of packages where we have got huge amount of out of the box functionality, there we typically do not end up in getting the right kind of size which can be used in the projects. So there are certain standards for function point counting: COSMIC, FISMA, IFPUG, Mark II, and NESMA. Likewise, there are many other standards to count the function point size. But in many instances, it is observed that the function, if any particular project decides to do the function point counting, then that itself becomes a big project. So there are pros and cons, of course. So that's what we are coming to, that measurement technique, in what instances we should be using which kind of method of estimation approach and which kind of sizing method. Moving on, I'm conscious of time, so I will quickly cover these aspects before we go to the outcome of the results of the survey. Use case points is another method wherein if any defined UML or RUB based methodologies are used in a software design or development, then it is easy to calculate the use case points. And those use case points are calculated which are based on the elements of the use case, the system use cases which are prepared using these UML or RUP based methodologies. And these use case points, they consider the technical and environmental factors to arrive at the size. Sub-process point is a technique which is very specific to Capgemini. We have derived a unique method to assess the size of the package. Typically in the package, there are out of the box L3 processes. So we have got a technique to weigh each L3 process and roll it up at a project level to decide the size of the particular implementation. So these first three sizing techniques, they fall under the detail or the analytical sizing part, and the remaining two, they are the ROM size and the t-shirt size. Now ROM size is a very high level size, but still there is a kind of thought process goes inside deriving the ROM size. It's a rough order of magnitude. It's again kind of a ballpark sizing approach. It is not as detailed as the earlier three, but it is in between. But there is no universal scale or there is no universal standard to arrive at ROM size. And lastly, it is t-shirt size, which is like, very loosely structured scale of t-shirts. So as we know that it's not that one shirt fits all, but one shirt may fit many, though it will not fit all, but it may fit many. So with that principle, t-shirt size serves a purpose in many instances. So there is a trade-off between what kind of speed with which we need to establish a size. We'll come to that measurement of each of those techniques. So these are the sizing techniques or sizing approaches provided in our centralized framework. So we saw that there are different estimation approaches to do the estimations, and there are different sizing techniques provided in the framework. Now, what our study said is that how do we establish in what circumstance which technique should be used? How people with their own skill set will use a specific method, a specific estimation approach, and a sizing technique. So to come up with the right kind of a measurement, we came up with a measurement framework which defined 4 parameters. One is the turnaround time, accuracy or the reliability of the estimate, repeatability, and reproducibility. So on these 4 parameters, we conducted a survey with the SMEs and the business analysts and the solution architects within the organizations. We gave them the questionnaire, we had the interview sessions with them, and tried to assess what are the preferred methods, under what scenarios they would prefer a specific estimation approach and a sizing approach. So before going to the survey, I'll quickly explain what those 4 measurement parameters are. TAT, or the turnaround time, is something which, what is the average duration it would take to produce the estimate for a similar kind of a project. So for the TAT, we gave a scale of highly time consuming to very quick. And then we asked survey responders to score each method on the scale. So, and of course, that is when it was floated, it is like comparing similar projects. Next one is the accuracy, how reliable the estimates are. and there is definitely a trade-off between TAT and accuracy. So for accuracy, if it is, again, we say that overestimation and underestimation. So if it is overestimated, particular approach or sizing method tends to overestimate or underestimate. So that was the scale given to score on the accuracy parameter. The third parameter which we studied is the reproducibility. So reproducibility is that the same approach, if person A is using, what results it will produce, and the same approach, if person B is using, what results it is producing. Is the results are the results reproducible? Are they comparable? That's a very important factor for the mission critical projects. If the approach, specific approach or a sizing method is not reproducible, then user has to think, what kind of compromise he has to do while using that particular approach. And the last parameter is the repeatability. Repeatability as in the same person, if the same person uses the same approach over a period of time, still is it producing the same results? Many times we see that the bid runs for several months, and during that the scope might change a little bit. So if the same scope is been estimated by the same person using the same technique, would it still produce the same results? So we found some interesting results out of those surveys. So this questionnaire had a very good sample data. I wouldn't be able to disclose the actual sample data and the raw data of the survey, but we had a good amount of samples, and we floated a questionnaire. We had question answer sessions. In fact, it was initially it was very difficult to explain these parameters and how would they rate it. But here is what we got as a result from the survey. So we see the 4 pillars over there for each assessment parameter: the turnaround time, accuracy, repeatability, and reproducibility. So for the expert judgment, it scored very high as expected on turnaround time, but it didn't perform well on the repeatability and reproducibility aspects of the measurement framework. It was kind of moderate on the accuracy level. For the analogous approach, turnaround time was not bad, but again, repeatability and reproducibility was not up to the mark, and accuracy, again, it was moderate. For the component and WBS driven approach, turnaround time dropped from previous 2. It improved on the accuracy. It was not repeatable at all, but it was moderately reproducible. For the top down or the parametric estimates, it scored very good on accuracy, repeatability, and reproducibility, but its turnaround time was poor. And lastly, the highest scoring was bottom up, which was scoring very high on accuracy, very high on repeatability, very high on reproducibility, but the turnaround time was not that good. So as we see, there is a trade-off between all these parameters. So depending on the situation, one would use a right kind of estimation approach. Similarly, we also conducted similar survey for the measurement of size. So for the preferred sizing methods on all these different sizing techniques like function points, use case points, sub-process points, ROM size, and t-shirt size. So as you see, for t-shirt size, people gave their choice for TAT. So for on t-shirt size, TAT was scoring very high, but compromise is on the reproducibility and accuracy and repeatability. Followed by that, ROM size. If you can see here, ROM size is TAT is a little bit reduced, but it has improved on accuracy a little bit compared to the t-shirt size. At the same time, if you see for sub-process points, it was more reproducible. So even if any number of people adopt this method of sizing in SPPs, the sub-process points, they were kind of the results were reproducible, but that was less and moderate amount of accuracy. For use case points, as you can see here, the accuracy is improved, reproducibility also is there, but it is not repeatable. Use case points is not repeatable, and TAT also is not that great. And for function points, TAT is very poor. Turnaround time, as we know, it's very complex process to establish the estimates, to establish the function points. And then it was very accurate. It was highly accurate, but it was moderately repeatable and it was not reproducible also, because it's a very niche technique. One has to be expert in the counting, and that's the reason it is not reproducible. So that is what we observed in these two surveys. These are the interesting results we found. So how should we use this survey results? Is that it helps in defining the guidelines for the framework. The framework which I mentioned, the GREAT framework. Of course, GREAT stands, it's an acronym, it's a group estimation tool. It hosts these set of estimation approaches as well as sizing methods. So along with these numbers, it helps us to set up the guidelines, kind of high level indicators in under what circumstances which should be used. In addition to these approaches and sizing methods, the framework also has good amount of thought process gone into for considering the non-functional requirements and productivity questions. I'll not cover each of those points here, but there is an elaborate thought process gone inside the framework to consider the environmental factors and non-functional requirements. So this is a list of some of the few of the project environmental factors, like knowledge of the business domain, knowledge of the project's technologies and systems, difficulty in integration. This deck will be subsequently shared, but it's these are the several different categories under which these NFR and productivity questions are categorized. Impact of the organizational tools. So likewise, this framework becomes one-stop shop, or the with the multiple different approaches, multiple different sizing methods, and considering the non-functional requirements and productivity questions. So finally concluding, so what we conclude with this survey is that for the big IT service provider organizations like us, the diversity is very important to address. It's not that one prescribed method which needs to be given for all the users, which will work for all. So based on the perceptions, people will use the preferred methods, and in under what circumstances which methods should be used. So those pointers are also framed. Each of them, they have their own merits and demerits, and this centralized unified estimation frameworks, it actually helps to cut down on the silos, and it helps to institutionalize the estimation process across the organization. So at the same time, as we say that there is no single approach which is right or wrong, all the approaches are equally good, but based on the circumstances, one's skill levels, preferences, demand of the situation, and the client background and other factors which we saw, one can decide which factor to be used. So here we are. As I said, Ria also contributed a lot on this presentation. Unfortunately, she couldn't join this webinar. Maybe she is hearing too. I wish her a fast recovery. And I must acknowledge my senior Carl's inputs. He's my guide and mentor. He shared his valuable thoughts in coming up with this. So that's what it is. So finally, as a bottom line, I would like to say that the numbers produced by the estimation process, they may or may not help, but the process does. Thank you very much. Are there any questions?
Well, so far, well, thank you. I wanted to say thank you. We haven't gotten any just yet, but I'm going to chit chat for a minute and see if anybody wants to throw any of them at us while they listen to me. Thank you all for coming today, and I hope you enjoyed today's presentation and have been enjoying our presentations so far this year. If you want to get in on this and be a part of the workshop next year, we have our call for papers deadline is coming up on November 3rd. I don't know if there's anything else important happening in the US, at least at that time. So maybe if there was something you could kind of mentally link that to as a good gauge of when that would be. It's 75 words for now. You don't have to write your whole paper. You don't have to write us an enormous abstract. Tell us what you want to talk about and why it's important, and we will add you into the folks who were considered. I got a question in, so I have a compliment in from Rohit Gupta, who says, thank you, it was very informational. Shashank, do you have anything to conclude with?
No, that's fine. I spoke a lot. Thanks for giving the opportunity.
Ria. Oh, and Ria was listening, and I hope she's feeling better. And also sends her compliments. Well, okay. Thank you, Shashank, and thank you all for joining us today. If you have questions, you can reach out. The information will be up on the website by lunchtime tomorrow. And if you aren't able to find Shashank's contact information, you can, of course, email the ICEA office at ICEA@ICEAonline.org, and we will patch you together. And so then, thank you so very much. Everybody has a few minutes to get some lunch in before their 1 o'clocks, or goodness, or whatever the next hour may be for you. Thank you all. Have a fantastic rest of your day, rest of your week. Be good to yourselves, be good to each other, and thank you.
Okay, thanks a lot, Megan. Thanks all. Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.